All right, we are live. So today we're here with Michael Derrick, author of the new on Indigogo Greyskale and previously Abductables.
Hey,
Thanks for
how's it
coming.
going? Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on your show. It's good to be here.
Yeah, of course. Anything I can do to help. So, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about Grayscale?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, this is technically my second book. Last year I launched The Abductables, which was a sci-fi action comedy. But this time around I'm doing something different. I'm doing a superhero book. So Grayscale, Welcome to Glitter City is a 60-page full color superhero book about a trash talking vigilante who controls the power of karma. And he does operate out of Glitter City, which is a fictional version of Las Vegas, and home to a whole bunch of crazy supervillains with some awesome powers. So he's gonna have a lot of cool fights. Gonna have a lot of cool fights in this book, and everything you love about superheroes, and hopefully we bring something new to the table as well. So if you're a fan of 1990s anti-heroes like me, I think you'll find something to enjoy here. But we'll have a few surprises in there as well.
It looks pretty interesting. So, you mentioned 1990s anti-heroes. Who would you say your biggest comic book character influences are for this book?
Um, well, interestingly, the aesthetics are inspired by the 1990s characters like Spawn in
Hmm.
particular, but as far as like a direct, character influence, I'd say Grayscale is more influenced by kind of actually a bunch of Marvel characters like the street level characters, kind of like Moon Knight and Daredevil, maybe a little bit of Batman from DC, but yeah, so I definitely wanted to contrast his mystical karma powers with kind of that street level working class hero aesthetic that I like. So
So would you say like tone wise, it's kind of in the vein of the old Marvel Knights uh sort of
yeah,
corner of the universe?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's going to be pretty edgy. It's going to be pretty violent. But it's interesting because Grayscale himself, he's kind of got this, as I mentioned, the kind of trash talking personality. I guess I could describe him as a kind of a less annoying version of Deadpool. Yeah, he likes to crack jokes at people's expense. He likes to talk trash in the way that Spider-Man used to do, and have fun with it. But it's only going to be fun and games for so long because he's gonna find himself up against some pretty powerful opponents, and he's probably gonna get break a few bones in the process. So he is flesh and blood underneath that costume, and he's gonna have his work cut out for him.
So is he wearing a full mask or
Yes, yes,
okay.
yeah. So yeah, that is a mask, and we will definitely get to know the man behind the mask. We'll definitely play with his secret identity, and I think we're gonna have a interesting take on that whole thing. Every good superhero needs a secret identity, but it was important to me not to just kind of check off the boxes of all the superhero tropes. Like as much as I love superhero books, I definitely while I have tributes to what came before here and there, I definitely wanted to be as unique as possible. So we'll definitely play with the superhero secret identity, but I think we have an interesting spin on it. So
Oh, very cool. One thing that kind of interested me about this campaign, and you mentioned before, Abductables was more sci-fi.
hmm
It seems like in independent comics, you had a lot of people who came over from loving Marvel and DC, which are primarily superheroes. But
hmm
for the vast majority of the books that I see, especially in Comicsgate and a lot of other independent sources, very few people are actually doing superhero books.
mm, yeah, yeah, that is interesting. I even while the Abductables was going on, I knew I wanted my follow-up book to be a superhero book because I really wanted to have a kind of iconic character that I can call my own, kind of a character that can be associated with me in the same way that like Spawn is associated with Todd McFarlane. Um, so
Hmm.
and I definitely agree with the sentiment that comics as a medium should be able to tell any kind of story. All
Hmm.
genres are welcome. But at the same time, I feel like in recent years, people are kind of looking down their nose a bit at the superhero genre, and mostly because I think there's some resentment with the fact that, at least in the West, superheroes and comics are pretty much synonymous. So,
Yeah, that's true.
when anybody talks about comics, they immediately think superheroes, and I feel like the industry as a whole has really made a concerted effort in recent years to kind of branch away from superheroes, which again I think is a good thing. But I don't want to necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I definitely still have a lot of love for the superhero genre, and I think there's still a lot of ground to be covered. Despite some people thinking that the genre is kind of played out because it's so old and it's been around, but I
Hmm.
still think there's a lot of interesting ways to take it on, and yeah, I just love superheroes, so I'm excited to have my take on the genre.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. I do think that sort of the current Marvel and DC crop are a little bit stale. I'm not super into what the SJW comics have become,
Hmm.
but to some extent, I can kind of see why they said, well, okay, we need to branch out. Let's try this thing. I think it was a horrible decision which way to go, but I can kind of understand like why you'd want to.
Yeah.
So how do you think being independent and with Grayscale, how do you sort of see superheroes as different from what Marvel and DC are doing?
Well, when I talk about branching off, I really mean more so like Image Comics
Hmm.
specifically. Because in the '90s they pretty much were exclusively superheroes. Obviously,
Oh
that's
yeah.
kind of what they started with. But then if you look at the majority of what comes out of Image Comics nowadays, I mean, that's superheroes are pretty rare, and
Yeah.
you know, as SJW as Marvel and DC are, I would say Image is probably even more so. So I definitely am on the same page with you in the sense that I'm very, very much not interested in what Marvel and DC have been putting out in recent years. I think I really don't like the direction they're going, not just in terms of content, and all the political propaganda and all that stuff, but really just the quality has declined, and both with the art and the storylines, and so as kind of a disgruntled fan, I guess I bring some of that to the table with this book because it is kind of a concerted effort on my part, at least, to bring back the stuff that I used to love about comics, and the stuff that you really don't see anymore, and bring back the fun, bring back the action, and bring
Mhm.
back the exaggerated characters, and just kind of embrace the madness of superhero comics.
Yeah, I'm like 50-50 with 90s stuff, to be honest. I think a lot of stuff in
Hmm.
the 80s were great. I think the 90s were great in some ways, and definitely fun and excitement was
Hmm.
their strong suit, especially that like 1992 period when Image broke off.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, I think people kind of the '90s kind of got a bad rap for a while for for some good reason because there was the market crash
Mhm.
in the late '90s because the speculation market kind of fell through. But I think enough time has passed that we can kind of look back on that era and see, okay, there were some bad things. Maybe the art was good, but the storylines weren't the best.
Yeah.
But I think it's time to kind of reevaluate and see, okay, well, what was good about it? What worked? Why were the books selling so much? It couldn't just be, because of all these wacky variant covers and stuff like that. There had to be something more that people were excited about, and I think it was just kind of the enthusiasm of having these original characters, and
Mhm.
the it was fun to see these artists that had been working for Marvel and DC, like Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld. Like it was cool to see them, do their own thing.
Hmm.
And I think I get a lot of the same vibes with the crowdfunding scene that kind of launched in 2018, where you had a similar thing, really, where you had the Ethan Van Skyvers and the Mitch Breitweisers and all those guys kind of go independent and release their own characters. And you know, I definitely respect that independent spirit, and I think it's resonating with a lot of people.
Yeah, and that it is a lot of similarities, although I kind of see it a little bit different in the market, in that at least in the 90s, there was an established market. You could get these comics almost anywhere. And now it seems like this whole movement is sort of reinvigorating those people who left the comics market for various reasons,
Hmm.
bringing a lot
Yeah,
of people back.
yeah, definitely. And before before your boy Zach, the Diversity Comics channel kind of came on the scene in like 2017. I had kind of given up the industry for dead, to be honest, because I wanted to. I was a comic fan my whole life, and I wanted to, be a comic book writer and break into the industry. But just seeing the decline of the quality and seeing the people kind of running the show and
Hmm.
really not liking how they were acting, and the way they were treating the fans and each other, and it seemed like a really ugly place. And so when Diversity in Comics came on the scene, he was kind of saying the things that I had been thinking for so long, and it was kind of like, wow, it kind of rejuvenated my love for the medium, because I finally had somebody saying what I had been feeling. And I think clearly I'm not the only one, because like you said, I think starting with your boy Zach, and then of course the transition into crowdfunding, I feel like it really is bringing in a lot of the disgruntled fans that had kind of left the industry behind, and I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm actually very curious to see in the future if there can almost be two comic industries existing simultaneously. And one would be, the more Marvel and DC that are very corporate controlled, and they're going to do with whatever the politically or business expedient thing is. And then you're going
Hmm.
to have this other group on the side. I was talking to Doug Ernst, and I kind of compared it to college radio, like in the
Hmm.
80s and 90s. Um, College radio was never as popular as top 40, but college radio absolutely set the trends for all the music that happened in the 90s. And I kind of
Hmm.
wonder if this crowdfunding um, group or movement is really going to start setting trends in all these other publishers.
Yeah, I have a feeling it will, and I think probably in the same way that uh, same thing that happened with radio. I don't think the crowdfunding scene or Comicsgate or whatever you want to call it. I don't think. I think the trends that are happening there will make their way into the mainstream, but they're not going to get any credit for it. you know,
No,
uh,
no, no. Of course not. Of course not.
yeah. So I think I even heard like certain publishers, like major publishers, are going to start dipping their toe in the crowdfunding waters. Unfortunately, but we'll see what happens there. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's just the American comic book industry is so weird, because it's like it's become so it's almost like it used to be mainstream, but now it's like kind of an insular uh kind of niche market. It's
Yeah.
it's and it'll be interesting to see what the future holds. I know that's kind of one of the main points of Comicsgate, is saying that how long does the direct market have, like these comic book shops keep going out of business? Is that business model going to be around in 10 years, or is crowdfunding the
Nope.
wave of the future? Yeah. So it's I think I'm optimistic in the sense that I think the comic book medium will obviously always exist in some
Yeah.
form. But as far as like the industry as it is now, I think it's due for a pretty radical change.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I think it's gonna have to merge with other industries too. Like
Mm,
you just can't have a comic book shop anymore. I
yeah.
live in Southern California, major metro area, and a comic book store by me just closed a few weeks ago. And it's
Mm,
like we have the population. How can you not keep that thing afloat? So
mm-hmm.
I think you're going to see like gaming stores take on certain comics, although it'll probably be graphic novels and they'll probably be mixed in with a lot of manga.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Yeah, I think it yeah, specifically, I think the reason like the comic book shops are unfortunately just going to go out of business is I think just the business model of going to a comic shop and picking up a floppy comic every week or month. It's just I think that's kind of already being replaced with because you have like
Mhm.
people who wait for the trade and stuff like that. So I think rather than just having, the periodicals that come out every month, I think it's going to be more of a graphic, you just go straight to graphic novel type of thing. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know if you were have been following Alterna, but they
Hmm.
stopped doing newsstand editions a month or two ago,
Ah,
and I'm really curious what's going to happen with the Brightwisers when they get their books into
mm,
Walmart. Is it going to last, or is it going to be? Are we going to see like a repeat of that Jim Lee video where Mitch Brightweiser is straightening up his books on a shelf with like peeps from last Easter or something?
yeah. I mean, I really hope that Mitch Brightweiser and Allegiance Arts succeed. I really do, but DC Comics, like you said, they did a similar thing where they tried to sell their books through Walmart,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know why. I just for some reason, like even when you take nowadays, even when you take comics out of the comic shop, which I understand why normies wouldn't necessarily want to go to a comic book shop, but even when you put it in front of them in a place like Walmart, which is as mainstream as it gets, they're still not really. I feel like you're still not really getting the casual like average Joe just walking by. Oh, a comic, let me pick that up. I feel like it's really still that hardcore market that's only going to seek that stuff out. I hope I'm wrong about that, but
Yeah,
yeah.
me too. I've been wondering about that too. I wonder if anybody's tried to break down the age of the average person who buys comics online.
Hmm.
Because, like you said, I actually went out and tried to look. I think DC had a deal with Target for a while too, and I was looking at the WalMarts near me, and if I go to work in another city, I'll check there. Same thing with the Targets, and I never saw any.
Hmm.
So it's a question of is the product so poorly respected that it's not in an area that the average person would find, which we sort of saw in the Jim Lee video, or is it? I kind of wonder too if now there's like a broken link. If
Mm,
comics had, if they had always continued to be in grocery stores and drugstores, would the people? It sounds like we're probably close to the same age. Who were growing up in the '90s and had comics when
mhm,
when we start having kids. If you saw some of those comics, when you're in line to pay for your groceries or something, would you have bought one for your kid? And then now that
mhm.
that's not available, do we have this whole generation who is probably getting to be around 20 now who never grew up with comics?
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's interesting. I again, I really do, uh, because I feel like I don't know why, but you would think if it was just a case of because people always go back to, well, the reason comics aren't selling as well because they're all, in these comic shops that,
Hmm.
normies don't go to. And, if they were on the newsstand, people would buy them. I don't necessarily agree with that because, people buy online now. So if,
Yeah.
with the explosion of superhero films and, all of a sudden Iron Man and Daredevil are household names, which they weren't, 20
Hmm.
years ago. If with these superhero movies that make billions of dollars, you would think that at least on something like Amazon, graphic novel sales will be through the roof. But I mean, they're not. People have no interest in normies at least really have not a lot of interest in comic books, it seems.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. And it's kind of a weird thing, just like you mentioned. Why is it that these comics, which used to be kind of a nerd culture, a subculture, and sold well, now that they're really mainstream, why don't regular people want to buy them?
Hmm. Though, I guess the counter to that would be like, I think something like Robert Kirkman's The Walking Dead.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure, with the success of that TV show, I think his graphic novel sales kind of blew up for sure. So
Yeah,
it
that's
is
true.
there. Yeah, there is a correlation, on a smaller scale than Marvel and DC. But maybe that is just a Marvel and DC problem because the whole 70 years of continuity, that might just be too much for people, because it's not like you could just be like, okay, I just saw a Spider-Man movie that was good, let me go get Spider-Man Volume 1. It's like, good luck with that. Like, where do you even
Yeah,
begin? So hopefully that is the case, and it is more of a Marvel and DC problem rather than a independent comic problem.
I think so, and I do think to an extent, a lot of it's poor coordination on their parts between their movie divisions and the comic book divisions. And I
Mm,
don't know that I wouldn't necessarily want the comic book divisions to be subservient to the
mhm.
movie parts, but if you like the Avengers movies and you went in to buy an Avengers book, none of the people you liked from the movies are in those books.
Right. Yeah.
Black Widow was in it for a while, but then they killed her off. And there's
Mhm.
like, and everybody you like is now looks different,
Mhm.
might be a different gender, and it's just very confusing.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And I remember, like, I don't know. I'm not sure what Batman movie it was, but I remember
Mhm.
there was one Batman movie that came out, and then people were talking about, oh, if you like Batman, you can go get the comics. But I think at the time, like, Batman was dead or something, so it's like, good luck with that. Yeah, it really is. You know, for comic book geeks, that kind of labyrinthine continuity is fun, but I think it's really not good for normal, regular,
Yeah.
people that just see the movie. It's like they don't know where to begin with that stuff.
Yeah, I think DC specifically, they really shot themselves in the foot when they started doing like a new 52 every maybe
Mhm.
like 3 years or something.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
that's kind of their business model now, is just to, when sales get low, just reboot the
yeah.
whole continuity and get a little bit of a boost, and then it goes back down again. And it was especially like Marvel. I think they even came out and said this, like, every year we're gonna have a hero die. It's like,
Yeah.
just for the shock value, and it does boost sales to get those issues where the character dies, but it's like, that's not gonna last. That's not a great business model long term. So
No, not at all. But speaking of good business models, uh, so what you mentioned you started listening to your boy Zach, and he sort of brought you back into comics, and I think he really had that effect on a lot of people. At what
mhm.
point did you say to yourself, "Yeah, I really should start making my own"?
Yeah, so that's something I've wanted to do anyway. I tried here and there before, you boy Zach, to break into the industry, to no success. But it's so I always wanted to be a writer in some capacity. Whether that be novels or movies or TV or whatever. Comics is my first love, and I always wanted to write comics, but I kind of been so disgusted with the medium that I had just kind of given it up. But so yeah, once my enthusiasm was kind of rekindled, it was definitely a no brainer that I wanted to get in on the action. And I'm so grateful that there's finally a context and an opportunity for a new voice on the scene like myself to actually put my work out to an enthusiastic audience, because that wasn't the case you know back a few years ago. So
Mhm.
the fact that crowdfunding is a viable option now, I'm very, very grateful for that.
And so, as a first timer, how did you find it? Just getting your crew together. working with artists, putting the whole campaign together?
hmm Yeah. So, I started. I think I opened my Twitter account in 2018, like early 2018,
Mm-hmm.
and as just a writer, it can be daunting to figure out how to team up with a artist, especially if you're broke, because it's very expensive to hire these artists.
Yes.
Um, so when I first kind of came on the scene in early 2018, I started just drawing my own web comics because I
Mm-hmm.
figured my art sucks, but if I could. If at the very least, even if my art isn't great, I can at least start getting some stories out there, and people can kind of get a sense of my storytelling chops. And that actually did pay off because it was through my web comics and kind of the online presence that I was building through there that I actually started talking to artists and people in the comics community, and I actually ended up doing my first collaboration with an artist. We did a short 10-page horror story together,
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, so building off of that, and it's like now all of a sudden, not only do I have the web comics, but now I have this 10-page story that I can show to people. Like, hey, see, I can write comics. So it's like you really just got to start somewhere, and I would definitely recommend that to people who want to break in. It's it can be expensive to hire an artist, but if you just start out with a short 5 to 10 page story, just something to get your name out there, something for people to read, something you could put in your bio as kind of a credit, and then just work from there. It just builds on top of each other, and then eventually you know you build up confidence, and you have your resume kind of grows, and you feel more confident reaching out to artists and saying, hey, do you want to work together, you want to put something together, make a comic. And I think you'll find that there's a lot of enthusiasm, and there's a lot of people out there that are looking to collaborate.
Yeah, and it looks like for Grayscale, you've actually sort of how to put it politely. I don't know. You've got a lot of high caliber artists working on your stuff. I see
hmm
you have Donald DeLay original art. Um,
yes.
so uh, is he doing like a separate piece, or is this a piece that goes in the book as well? Or
Yeah, so that is a piece of original artwork. And Donald, who of course is the artist of Cash Grab and Vestige and Brutus the Badass,
Mhm.
he mostly works digitally. So the fact that we actually have a piece of original
Oh,
11 by
it's
17
impressive.
artwork, yeah, it's a pretty big get. So I did commission him for that artwork. But yeah, the not only are we selling the original art, but the piece itself will be featured in a pinup gallery in the book. And we actually just got that colored by our colorist, Eugene. So, if you,
Very cool. I think
yeah,
it's
it's
the
yeah,
first image on the.
yeah. So you can see there, it looks pretty epic. So, yeah, and then yeah, we got a whole, as far as for the main 60-page book, we got a whole
Mhm,
creative team working on it. So, I'm the writer, and we have an artist, PK. He does the sequentials, and
mhm.
then the aforementioned Eugene is on colors, which, as you can see, look fantastic. And then we got James Reed for the letters, who's a industry veteran. So he's
Oh,
bringing his expertise to give it a nice professional feel. And yeah, so.
yeah, it definitely seems like it's coming together. So I assume that you're running point on this. How hard is it to sort of wrangle everyone into um, to sort of focusing on what your vision of the book should be?
Mm. Yeah, it's every collaboration is a little different. Every personality is different. Um, with my previous book, The Abductables, the artist for that was Ibai Canales,
Hmm.
who of course did Iron Sights with your boy Zach. Um, our relationship was great because I think we see things similarly, and we were kind of on the same page for most ideas. But for Grayscale, me and PK, we tend to it's more of a back and forth than it was with Canales, where we kind of bounce ideas off of each other, and
Hmm.
you know, I think both collaboration styles are good in their own way. But I will say that the back and forth with PK has definitely paid off in a lot of respects. A lot of ideas exist that wouldn't have otherwise existed because of that. So
Very cool. Here we go. Here's the
yeah, there's a black and white scan of
let's see
the
the whole thing.
original page. Yeah, I love how that piece turned out. That's a Grayscale battling one of his villains in his rogues gallery called Repo, who's basically the Grim Reaper on steroids. So, you know,
Well, it seems like the Grim Reaper would hang out in Las Vegas.
yeah, yeah. He moonlights as a debt collector in Glitter City. So, yeah, and someone hires him to break Grayscale's legs. So we'll see how that plays out.
Um, so you had mentioned that you sort of wanted to make your own Spawn, your own iconic character.
Mhm.
Do you see Grayscale as something that you would continue on in the future?
Yeah, definitely. That is the hope. I designed this first book, Welcome to Glitter City, as a I kind of, it's got the three act structure, so it does have a
Mhm.
satisfying conclusion. So it is a story unto itself, but it also sets up a lot of, it plants a lot of seeds for plot points to come. So the plan is for this to be the first book of many. There is an overarching storyline called the Red Hand Saga that
Mhm.
hopefully we'll be able to tell because there is everything's leading to kind of the final boss, so to speak, and so hopefully, yeah, this will be the first of many books with Grayscale.
So one thing I'm always curious about when people have stuff like this. I had Sweetcast on
Mm,
like a month ago or something, and I forgot to ask him this. But in your universe in Glitter City, you mentioned there are a lot of villains.
mhm.
Um, is it common for people to hang out in like superhero costumes, or would people look at them strangely?
Oh yeah, so yeah, that's definitely a dynamic I wanted to play around with here because I didn't want Grayscale to be like because usually when you have like an origin story or like a new
Hmm.
hero, the it tends to be the dynamic where they're the first one, and then
Uh-huh.
other characters are attracted to them, and all of a sudden a superhero universe is born. But I kind of wanted Grayscale to be a just one of many crazy, superpowered characters. So he does exist in a superhero universe, and in particular, Glitter City is home to a whole bunch of crazy costume characters. So he doesn't necessarily stick out from the pack in the sense that he's not like the first on the scene or anything like that. So
Hmm.
whereas in other superhero book, you might have the main character go by and people are like, oh my god, but in Glitter City, a guy running around in a mask wielding a truncheon, that's not exactly the most that's kind of par for the course in Glitter City. So and he is Grayscale himself is fairly new to the scene in the book. I didn't want to start with an origin story. I kind of wanted to jump into the action.
Hmm.
But he is still fairly new, so he's still kind of making a name for himself.
So how did the people in this city? So you said they're not the superheroes aren't it's not like if in our world a guy in tights and a cape came flying into a city, everyone would stare. But
Hmm.
like, what's the general feeling? Like, are they happy that they're superheroes? Are they annoyed? Are
They kind of just take them for granted in a way, almost
Huh.
because it's not like oh super people just started developing superpowers like 5 years ago or something like that. Like in the context of this world that
Mhm.
Grayscale exists, superheroes have existed in some form or another as long as humankind has. Like people have had superpowers. It's not a sense of like there's humans and there's mutants. Like there's not
Mhm.
that clear distinction. It's more of a case of kind of like a traditional superhero universe where some people are mutants, some people have tech, some people are just street level vigilantes, some people have powers granted to them by the gods. Like I really wanted to have a situation where anything goes, and people have powers for all different reasons, and I wanted to make it as open ended as possible.
And so how does Grayscale get a rogues gallery? It almost seems like when there's a ton of superheroes, like most villains would be like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna bother with that guy. He's not cool enough yet." So how does he acquire his rogues gallery?
So yeah, he has a habit of making enemies. So honestly, he kind of collects his rogues gallery just by pissing off the wrong people. Case in point, Repo, the Grim Reaper on steroids. He's actually hired by someone that Grayscale did wrong as revenge. Because Grayscale, he's a very proactive hero in the sense that because he can see people's karma, he actually seeks out trouble, because he
Oh,
can
okay.
see. Yeah, he could see. It's not like he has to wait around for like a robbery in progress. Oh, let me go save the day. It's more of, hey, let me see who has the worst karma in the vicinity, and go beat the crap out of them. And he doesn't really, he can't yet at least see, what it is they've actually done to deserve that bad karma. But he just knows, okay, if you've got bad karma, you did something wrong. So let me punish you accordingly. And as you can imagine, that kind of worldview and that kind of philosophy gets him into a lot of trouble and makes a lot of enemies.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Can he manipulate people's karmas as well?
Yes. That's kind of his finishing move in a way. Something he's still kind of working on, still learning, and is a lot of drawbacks to using karma in a active sense.
Hmm.
But in addition to seeing people's karma, that he does have I guess you could call it a finishing move called instant karma, where he could cash in their bad karma right on the spot and
Oh,
cause them instant misfortune. So the universe kind of punishes them right then and there, based on where they are and all the factors that are at play in any given moment. So as you can imagine, there's going to be some pretty interesting ways that plays out, and and it is proportionate to their crimes, so to speak. So the
ah,
work, the worse your karma is, the bigger the punishment's going to be. So.
hmm. All right, now I'm curious how that's gonna work out for like the Grim Reapo.
Yeah, I don't want to give it away, but rest assured, it's going to be pretty epic.
All right, and then there's also a large version of, I believe it's Phantasmagoria.
Yes, that's another one of Grayscale's villains. She can actually create thought forms out of psychedelic hallucinations. So she
Ooh,
tends to blow the minds of the citizens of Glitter City, and makes for some great visuals in the process.
now is she like a full time dedicated villain, or like
Uh,
you said, the Grim Reapo, he just does side jobs. Like his side gig
mhm,
is
yeah.
bodyguard for hire or whatever. Uh, does she do other things as well? Is this like everybody kind of has their main thing, and then they're like you can
Well,
hire them on the side, or
she Phantasmagoria is a pretty unique case in the sense that she's almost, I guess you could call like a split personality type, because
oh,
you know she's she is like kind of a normal, albeit kind of weird person during the day, but whenever she kind of gets a bad trip, she becomes this character, and she doesn't necessarily have memories of her wrongdoing. So yeah, she I guess it is kind of a split personality type where once her once her like hallucinations kick in and she becomes Phantasmagoria, it's like all bets are off, and
hmm.
she just kind of like wreaks havoc in Glitter City and goes around giving people bad trips.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I can imagine Las Vegas, like really a lot of bachelor parties ending really poorly with that.
Exactly. Yep.
And I see too, you have Dark Ages Ashcan.
Yeah, so that's just a, little add-on perk that
Mhm.
you people can choose at checkout. It's a, 24-page sci-fi story. written and drawn by Grayscale artist PK. So if you want a little more bang for your buck, you can add that ash can on to your order and get a unique original sci-fi story about the goings on of a Mars colony in the far future.
Nice. So when do you expect to have so the oh man. So the Indiegogo ends this weekend or in 7 days, sorry.
Mhm.
When after it ends, do you think you're going to have the book finished?
So we set our fulfillment date for September,
Mhm.
but I did overestimate that, so we're hoping to have that at least a couple months early. Barring any unforeseen difficulties. PK is a very fast artist, and our team is very fast. So we do have a schedule planned out for once the book does get funded. Again, barring any unforeseen circumstances, we should have that out before the fulfillment date.
Oh, very nice.
Yep.
Out of curiosity, are you guys printing in China or?
No. Yeah. So we are printing in America. I kind of just wanted to do that anyway, even before the coronavirus stuff popped off.
Yeah.
So that just kind of confirmed that I did the right thing by printing in America. I had a really good experience with my printer for the Abductables. They were very professional and timely, and I
Mhm.
liked the quality of the book itself. So I'm probably going to stick with them again this time around, and they are based in the U.S. So yeah, no coronavirus books going out to people.
Yeah, I was just reading John Malin, the
Oh
update
yeah.
for his book, and he's like, "Oh, sorry guys." Like I can just
Yeah.
imagine on Twitter soon people being like, "Well, your book's late."
Yeah,
Well,
that's
hey, virus guys, I would prefer a germ-free copy if at all possible.
yeah. That's what they get for cutting corners, because I think the appeal for a lot of people printing in China is that it's cheaper.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I'd rather print in America, even before that whole thing. But yeah, that does suck for John Malin, and I
And I know
think
there were some other people too.
yeah, I think there's a few different people who printed in China, and yeah, that sucks. Hopefully that gets cleared up soon, because otherwise it's gonna be a pretty long delay for those printings.
Yeah, definitely. So after Grayscale, um, what's next for you?
Yeah, so like I said, I hope this first Grayscale book is the first of many. I do have a long-term story plan, so hopefully we can continue to put out books in the Grayscale universe. We also have a sequel to the Abductables planned that hopefully we can get out this year. It's just
Nice.
a matter of figuring out the scheduling and all that. So stay tuned for sequels to these two books, and I do have a whole bunch of ideas for other books. It's just a matter of right place, right time, right creative team. So I my plan is to stick around. I want to be telling stories for years to come, and I got a lot of stories to tell. So any way I can do that, I will definitely try to make that happen.
Is this something that you would like to turn into more of a full-time career? Because I imagine you have to be doing something else in
Hmm.
addition to this at the moment.
Yeah, I would. That is the hope and dream, I suppose. I do work a day job, or in my
Yeah,
case, the night job, and so the idea of being able to put my full focus on comics as a career would be really awesome. I know, comics is interesting because it's either you make no money or you make a bunch of money, and
yep.
there's very very little in between. So. Yeah, I definitely long term I would hope to make a career out of this. But worst case scenario, if I do just continue with the day job and do this on the side, I can't complain because I'm having a blast putting these books together and putting them out there.
Oh, that's awesome. So you said you want to get Abductables 2 done this year too. Do
Hmm.
you think it's feasible to do 2 a year, or do you think you can increase that even more?
I definitely think it's feasible to do 2 a year. Beyond that, I don't know because, just with finances and, time it takes
Mhm.
because it takes a lot of, time and energy and effort and,
Yeah.
not just money, to run these campaigns and get them out there. So I think I could definitely do 2 a year. Beyond that, I'm not sure. But crowdfunding, that's the kind of the place to be right now. But I am definitely open to other opportunities as far as like work for hire or
Mhm.
any way that I can get my stories out there, I'd definitely be open to. So if I love crowdfunding and I'm grateful for it, but if there's other opportunities that arise, I'll definitely jump on those as well.
Nice. So even if, like, let's say, I don't know, Boom or Vault Studios were to hire you for something, do you think you would continue to do your own projects on the side as well?
Yeah, I guess that would be a case of exclusivity and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a feeling you know, companies like Boom and, Dark Horse and stuff like
Mhm.
that. I don't think they'll be knocking on any Comicsgate doors anytime soon. I feel
Well,
like there might be a bit of a blacklist going on, but plus it's another case of the, what I love about crowdfunding and independent comics is that I don't have any gatekeepers, I don't have any editorial supervision. I can just
yeah.
kind of do my own thing, and I don't have to have anybody telling me what to do. But I'll certainly listen to any offers if they did come around. But that's just a case by case basis.
Yeah, now that you mention editors, that's something I ask people a lot. Um, and that's one thing I don't see on most crowdfunded books is an editor.
Mm.
So, do you think that there is um, a position or a need for editors in crowdfunding or crowdfunded books, I
Mhm.
should say?
I mean, from a purely logistical standpoint, I suppose it would be nice to have someone that could kind of like be a middleman and kind of
Mhm.
like kind of like run the day to day operations of the project and the campaign and, make sure everybody gets their work done on time and all that. But as far as like any kind of creative input, I'm pretty much a control freak. So, I wouldn't necessarily want people, suggesting, oh, maybe you should do this with the storyline. It's like, I kind of have things already planned out in my mind. So, but yeah, logistically, I think, I wouldn't be opposed to, bringing on an editor at some point. But, with the small scale operations that, we're running here, I don't really see the need for one at this time. But, of course, that could change if one of these campaigns actually, blew up and,
Uh-huh.
things got a lot bigger. I know, with the bigger campaigns when they get backers in the thousands, like a lot of them have to turn to like fulfillment centers and stuff to ship their
Right.
books out. But I will definitely not do that as long as I can because as of now, because we have a lot fewer backers, it's
Mhm.
really no problem for me to just pack and ship the books myself. And
Right.
there's I've heard too many horror stories with some of these fulfillment centers that I'd
Oh,
be very wary to work with them. So as long as I can do everything myself, I will definitely do that.
well, I mean, even some of the bigger companies, I think Peter Samedi more or less does most of his at least online shipping by himself. I know
Hmm.
he's still working through Diamond for the individual comic stores, but even there, I know he's been trying to get more direct sales to them.
Hmm.
So it may be possible.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it because just running this small campaign, that's enough for me. But yeah, Peter somehow he's still a one man operation, even though he's constantly shipping books out and working with all these different creators. I mean, he's a madman, but I respect it.
Although to be fair, he doesn't have to go somewhere else to work for 8 hours and then
Yeah,
come
that
home
is
and do it in his spare
yeah,
time.
that is true. The benefits of that just being his full time job for sure, but it is definitely a full time job. I imagine he's working at least 12-hour days. So I definitely admire his work ethic.
So, seeing as this is your second comic, you already have one out in your fans' hands.
Mhm.
What kind of advice would you give to someone who is where you were in like 2017 or 18? What words of wisdom could you give to someone who wants to enter the industry?
Yeah, so I would definitely recommend, you know, start small and work your way up. If you just if no one's ever heard of you and you just jump into crowdfunding blind, it might be a very difficult road. I mean, this is my second campaign and we're
Mhm.
still struggling to get funded. So it's not crowdfunding is not for the faint of heart. But so I would definitely recommend getting your name out there just by you know get some short stories out there, collaborate with some artists, have them do a 5 page 10 page story, just something that you could kind of use as a calling card to show people and see, kind of show them your stuff. And you know s- collaborations and success, it'll kind of build on top of each other. Like, you got to work
Mhm.
your way up. And get your name out there as soon as possible, start making connections, talk to other creators and fans, and be active on social media and stuff like that. And just don't be afraid to promote your stuff, because if nobody knows about your project, they're not gonna you're not gonna be successful. So just
Definitely.
it, and in my I'm a pretty reclusive person by nature, so it definitely took a bit to kind of come out of my shell and start promoting myself. But once you get the hang of it, it's pretty it comes naturally. And and the big thing is, if you're passionate about what you're creating, it shouldn't
Mhm.
be it's no difficulty to promote yourself, because it's something that you believe in.
Yeah, I think so. And I have to say, as a consumer, one of the most disappointing things to me is when someone, like they'll mention a campaign once or something, either on
Hmm.
Twitter or maybe I'll catch them on somebody's stream, and then they
Hmm.
seem to disappear, like just
Yeah.
drop off the face of the earth. And it was like, a few months later, I might think like, oh yeah, that one campaign looked pretty cool. I wish, you
Hmm.
know, I I could remember who that guy was or where to go for the campaign.
Yeah,
So,
I always use I don't know if you're familiar with the Jack Irons campaign,
uh-huh.
but I always go back to that because, I mean, Cody Fernandez, the guy behind Jack Irons, he promotes the hell out of his stuff. And I remember when he was promoting the first book back in like 2018, I would see, his tweets promoting the book like constantly on my feed. And I would kind of see it and like, oh, that looks pretty cool. But I never really intended to back it, but I just kept seeing it. And like finally I was like, oh, okay, let me look at this campaign, because he keeps talking about it.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so don't be ashamed to be persistent, because it might take people. It's not a case necessarily of they look at it once and then it's either they back it or they don't. It might take people a while to kind of figure out what you're going for. And people might need to be convinced, more than just a on a first case basis. But yeah, definitely promote your stuff, because like you said, it is weird when people have projects going on, and then you might hear about it on a stream or something, and then you go like look at their social media, and it's like, okay, I've scrolled down through 100 tweets and I still don't see a link to your campaign. Like,
Yeah,
what are
exactly.
you doing? you know so yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right too. That's one thing, I like to look at people who have sort of done things right. And one thing I've noticed is the people who do it right, they sort of advertise their project and show their project in different ways. Like
Hmm.
I always use Van Klaus's Monster MD as an example.
Mm.
Any individual part of that, I'm absolutely not interested in. Uh,
Hmm.
I wasn't interested in a monster book. I'm not super into the manga style. But when I when he finally started throwing up pages and he would, throw up pages, he would go and he would talk about his stuff. Then I was like, all right, maybe I'll take a look. And then now it's actually a project I'm very excited about.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
think you almost have to give people an excuse
Hmm.
to why it's okay to like your book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got to figure out different ways to say the same thing, like
Mhm.
yeah, exactly, like promote from different angles, because people people will be attracted to a book for a number of different reasons. They might, just want to back it purely for the art. They might just like the concept itself, or they might, like the writing style, or any number of things. So, definitely promote all aspects of your project, and hopefully there will be something about it that people enjoy.
All right. Well, I know you've got a lot to do, and I don't want to hold you up too much. Any final thoughts for anyone who wants to back Grayscale?
Yeah. So, thank you for having me on, and to anybody listening, if you like what I had to say, but you're still kind of on the fence, we do have 5 fully colored and lettered preview pages on the campaign. So, if you enjoy the concept, but you kind of want to get a sense of how it's going to play out, I definitely recommend reading through those preview pages. It is the opening scene of the book, in which Grayscale breaks up a casino robbery. So you'll kind of get a sense of his personality, and how the book's going to play out. So definitely check out those preview pages. We also have a bunch of pinups and cool stuff as well. So and a bunch of different perks. So hopefully there's something there that piques your interest. So definitely check it out.
All right, everyone. Michael Derrick, writer of Grayscale. Go check out his go check out the campaign on Indiegogo, and I will put a link in the description to this video. Thanks for coming on, and I wish you luck.
Appreciate it.